Hi, thanks for joining us. My name is Garen Daly, and this is another Boston SciFi Presents podcast. Today, it's not such a wonderful Christmas, where we take a look at the dark side of Christmas and the bad Santas that are all out there. And joining us are two other bad Santas, Peter Stray and Jay Michaels. Peter is a film director. I think we first met when you did Canaries, correct?
That's right. Yes, 2017 Boston SciFi. Going back to it now, yeah. And Canaries is, well, it's post Christmas. It's New Year's Eve. Aliens versus drunken Welsh people, basically.
I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, besides, are there any sober Welsh people?
There are. There's me now, and there's some other people. Anthony Hopkins. He's
there we go.
5 years. In this country, it was also released by the distributor under the name Alien Party Crashers. So if anyone wants to find my movie in this country, it's Alien Party Crashers. Distributors
are always going to put alien or invasion in there because they think it sells.
That's what they said. They said it's got to be called Alien something. So I thought, well, maybe if I put Party Crashers on it, it's going to sound a bit grindhouse and fun. So that's what happened. So Canaries, anywhere else in the world, Alien Party Crashers in the US.
And we'll get into one of your new projects in a bit, which is apropos for today. And if you could just kind of like raise your body up a little and show that wonderful sweater that you're wearing.
Oh, yes. Yeah. This is my my Hans Gruber Christmas sweater.
Yes. Very good. Very talented. Do the lights work, by the way?
Say again?
Do the lights work? I mean, do they flash?
Oh, sadly not. No, it's just a sort of screen grab of something from Etsy.
Next time, Peter, you have to fix that. Okay.
I should thread little flashing lights through it. Yes.
Please do. Please do.
Not to sweat because you'll electrocute yourself if you do.
That's the idea.
There we go. All right, Garen's clearly.
This is all about horror and bad Santa. So I think I can up a little bit, please.
You're gonna sabotage my sweater and Grinch me to death.
No, we would never do that. We would miss you. Come on. And Jay, you've done this before with us, haven't you? Or is this your first time? Are you a neophyte?
This is my maiden voyage on the podcast. I've done probably every other Boston SciFi thing, but this is my maiden podcast.
And why don't you just give folks a quick taste of what you do for a living?
I walk the thin line between creating projects and promoting projects. I'm a stage and film producer, and I also run a PR firm, and I promote independent artists on stage, in film, in television, if you can believe there's such a thing as independent TV. And now we've gotten into literary figures and other such things. So I promote them, and when I'm not doing that, I produce stage works, I produce films. I'm also a commentator on ACWTV's J-Watch, where we discuss classic television. lost episodes, rare movies, etc.
Okay. The problem was asking Jay something like that. The list is so long of all the things that he does. It could go on for like 45 minutes. He's kind of got this protean energy going on all the time. So it's really one. But anyways, guys, thanks for joining us today. I'm looking forward to this one because I just think it's going to be fun. We're taking a look at the dark side of Christmas because I got to tell you, I mean, maybe 40 years ago, It's a Wonderful Life was something that, kind of touched me. I love the Americana of it. I like Frank Capra. I'm just sick and tired of that kind of crap. And then Hallmark. I mean, how many films do they make a year where it's the same old story?
And I think even just the thumbnail posters, someone did a montage of all the posters they had. And I think it's woman in red, guy in green. I think they're all white people, and they're identical. The thumbnails are identical.
And it's boring. And I think the best joke that I've heard so far this season is that if someone is actually going into one of those Hallmark movies, the woman definitely needs to ask that hunky guy who's in the village, what was he doing on January 6th?
There's a whole Amy Schumer skit about this.
Yeah. So
the busy woman from the city, and then she says, "Oh, that's why I left," and everyone's carrying around their MAGA signs.
Anyway, so is there? I mean, we've got about 5 films we're going to talk about today, and we're going to look at some other clips from other ones. Is there something about the dark side of Christmas that we should know about before we even start the show today?
Yes, it's all Charles Dickens' fault.
Oh, that's an interesting take on it. So you think this is all about Scrooge?
Think about it. Our favorite Christmas story, which has over 100 years, they've made over 1,000 different versions with everything from ducks to Patrick Stewart. What are you basically saying? If you tell the story, 4 ghosts visit the nastiest man in Gothic, miserable England. The first ghost dragging his sins with him. Show him that his life is a misery unless he changes. And that's the only reason he decides to donate money later in life. Now, we look at it as this lovely, heartwarming tale. But when you get right down to it, ghosts, misery, sadness, England, Gothic time, if you look at historically, Gothic England, that's where Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was created. That's where Dracula was created. It was only 20 years since Frankenstein was created. It's this harsh thing. So that's always been back here in our heads. And finally, one day, yes.
One of the things we can always say about Dickens is that a lot of his stuff was social commentary, and that one of the things he was commenting on was the plight of regular people and poor people in Victorian England, as you pointed out. So I'm wondering, is there something? And Peter, you can address this. Is there something about these spate of films, because the earliest film we got is from 1988 and the latest one from 2022. Is there something in those 40 years or so of American culture that has decided that we need to have this kind of film being made to assuage some concern that we have?
Well, first off, I can't speak as eloquently as Jay can, excuse me, about Dickens. Just because I've got a British accent doesn't mean I'm the expert there. But what I would say is a lot of the dark side of Christmas, in terms of American cinema, can be sort of traced back a little bit to the same as the rest of horror films, which is post Nixon, post Watergate. There's an incredible amount of sort of distrust, and you see a lot more films about mistrust, distrust, false information, surveillance. They're watching us, this kind of thing. And I think it really affected horror as well. And the original Black Christmas was 1974, I think. And so you get this kind of this darker take in general on certain subject matters coming out of the 70s, and then into the 80s. You've got you've got this sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Like a kind of a rebellion against the sort of 80s greed from Reagan and from Thatcher. I remember, Gremlins was something that I grew up with, which, I think is not even in the honorable mentions later on, but is sort of has a wonderfully playfully dark take on Christmas, or and sort of an anti-capitalist thing going on there.
Well, let's take a look at a clip from 2003, and you'll recognize the film immediately. But when I was doing my research, I saw that when it played in Czechoslovakia, the tagline was "Santa's a pervert." Here's that clip.
Jews for Jesus.
That was Bernie Mac with that line. And as I was telling Mark, our director, who's behind the scenes here, that when Terry Zwigoff, the director, was reading the script, he wasn't going to do it until he heard or read that line and said, "Okay, now I get it. Now I get it." So Terry Zwigoff did direct that. He also directed Crumb and Ghost World, so he comes with something. Bernie Mac is in it, Billy Bob Thornton, Lauren Graham, and it's John Ritter's last film. So there's a lot about this film that's good. But Bad Santa is not about a good guy, is it?
No, I mean, well, arguably A Christmas Carol's not about a good guy. But I think I remember seeing Bad Santa in 2003 and just loving it. And I think the sort of early 2000s, possibly post 9/11, there was a lot of, I think, wanting to laugh at dark subject matter. So we had wanting to be scared, of dark subject matter coming out of the 70s, and then I think there was a lot of wanting to look at death and sort of laugh at it, laugh in its face, coming out from the early 2000s, and looking at the dark side of something positive, in a way, which is a wonderfully cynical way to twist it around with Christmas and have this awful alcoholic Santa. And that clip actually happens just after my favorite shot of the film, which is,
if we'd known that, we would have put that one in.
Yeah, the escalator, where you just see him go up the escalator like completely, I think, unconscious. Like you see one hand, I think, first draped over a bottle, and then that comes up the escalator first, and then all of him comes up. And that to me, that's the thing that I'll always remember when I see that.
Well, we're seeing like an evolution, if you will. How far is this? Well, it's very far, but how far is this from when Art Carney played a drunken Santa on The Twilight Zone? There, we were still a world where we wanted to see a happy ending. So it must be, as much as he was a drunken Santa, he was weeping, he was sad, he was miserable. And Peter, you hit it when you were talking about the 70s and the 80s. We're in a world now where we're saying, "Oh, come off it. That's not real." So now we're taking the drunken Santa and let's get an abusively drunken Santa. So I think it's always been there. It's always been, well, what happened? Who's the guy in the fake beard? But now we're not saying he's a sad man. We're saying he just is pissed off
and drunk. And going back to your point about the escalator, according to the trivia stuff, Billy Bob Thornton was drunk at that time and had drunk a whole bunch of wine and vodka before he did that scene. I don't know whether that was during his heyday of being an alcoholic before he cleaned up, or obviously before he cleaned up. But it's still that kind of exacting of the acting. And to your point, Jay, Bad Santa does have redemptive qualities. He does find a bond with the boy. He does try to help the boy. He does, find a groupie, finds a little bit of love. So I think they were trying to cut it both ways with being, miserable and then having something. But the script, no one wanted the script. No one wanted it. It went through Fox. It went through Universal. It was finally picked up by Dimension, which is a subsidiary of Miramax, back when Miramax was actually pretty good. So I think they were surprised at how well it did, and surprised that it found an audience for that.
Studios are afraid to give us reality. They think the audience doesn't want it, but they crave it now. Now they don't want to know that there's reindeer and angels and things. No, they want to know the reality. So even in that, in Art Carney's episode of The Twilight Zone, he ends up becoming Santa and flies away. Very, very fantasy. But in this, yes, Billy Bob, helps a real kid. He helps a person. So we're seeing the darkness, and the resolution is not, oh, look, there's an angel. The resolution is you can be a good person even if you're not at that moment.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think what we were seeing with Bad Santa, to both of your points, is that it's almost like it's in the early stages of what would the early stages of the reasons of why things like Netflix and then other streaming things would become so successful, which was, I think, 70s and 80s, and previous to that, 90s. Studios were saying, no, this is what people want. They want this one thing. They want something with a happy ending. And then horror people want horror films. Rom-com people want rom-com films. And it was all very much like, these are your 5 flavors. These are the choices. And so much was done with test screening, but in malls in LA. So it wasn't really accounting for anywhere else in the world. And they would change things based on that. Now with streaming, you see that what people are saying is, oh, wait, there's something for everybody. There's tons of choice. And here's this weird, dark niche thing, which we're going to produce for these 2 million people who watch it, instead of trying to get 50 million people to watch everything. And Bad Santa was a case of, there was a whole bunch of people out there who wanted to laugh and be dark and cynical about Christmas. So we still have Hallmark because there are so many people out there who want to love, laugh and cheer, and people like me who actually want to watch one of those movies once in a while with friends to just laugh at them.
Exactly.
To have a kind of Tommy Wiseau experience of watching these things. But then with Bad Santa, I think it was one of those films where people weren't expecting it, but it spoke to an audience out there, an underserved audience.
Well, it's because of independent cinema up until a certain point. Even the horror movie, it was called The Bee Picture with Boris Karloff. That's the horror movie, nothing else. Now there is a cavalcade of independent versions of it. So people are now getting a taste of it. They're saying, okay, well, I don't have to see this. Is there something else? And sometimes there's a studio brave enough to say, okay, we're going to put this in the mainstream.
Well, there are films that, I mean, I've been in the business for a long time, and I usually try to keep my ear to the ground about what films are coming up and stuff like that. I remember when this next film that was brought to my attention, and I really didn't realize what it was at first. I just heard that there's this really good Finnish film about Santa Claus. And, as I was doing my research, I realized, well, not only is this film called Rare Exports, which is now called Rare Exports: A Christmas Tale, out there for everyone to see, but that the director has one of my favorite films for 2023, which is Sisu. And here is a clip of Rare Exports.
Meitä koko ajan.
Mitä sä tarkoitat? Suu puhtaaksi!
Se on joulu. Se on tullut hakemaan mua. Ne kaivoi sen sieltä korvatunturilta.
Satuolento, saatana. Mä olen alun perin arvannut, että jotain outoa tässä on. Ja nyt on! Nyt se tulee päälle!
Isällä anna se viedä mua!
Maahan! Maahan! Käske aivo sitä! Tulkaa sille! Maahan!
Down, boy! Go down!
Sillä on joku oma kieli.
Ei se teitä pelkää.
Käse! Pankaa se pakettiin. Mä en tohon kyllä enää koske. Heti!
And of course, those are Christmas cookies they're eating.
And Santa is, of course, skinny.
Skinny, yeah. Well, the whole the conceit in that is that Santa is an evil creature, and it's a story about how they dug him up and how he's going to steal the kids and how they have to control Santa and his elves, and how they spread Christmas by capturing them and sending them around the world. It's a brilliant story, and it's dark, really dark.
Yeah. Well, ironically, I could see this definitely becoming in vogue because it's what, about 10 years now that everyone is celebrating Krampusnacht.
Yeah.
I never even heard of that when I was a kid. Yet this is a multi-century sort of legend, and yet now it's like everyone has their Krampus T-shirts. There's Krampus movies. We Santa Claus. Okay, there's Santa Claus, and there must be something else. So
Well, I mean, think about it. He knows what you're doing.
Yeah.
He sees you all the time, and
like
he's
that.
making a list.
Yep.
You know, the people that make lists are not necessarily good people. You know, anyone who says they're making a list is probably not going to be sending you gifts.
Dana Carvey's church lady used to hate Santa and say it's actually an anagram for Satan.
Yeah. But anyway, so I mean, and again, I love when I do my research on this, or I know from my CA that there's a guy with a passport, and his passport number is 314-159-265. Any idea?
Pi.
Yeah, very good, Peter. So I love it when films stick those little Easter eggs in there in Pi. On a completely different, dark Nordic Finnish kind of thing, we go over to England, and we take a wonderful film that I found to be delightful, charming, musical, and dark as you could possibly could, based on a story called Zombie Musical. Here is a clip from Anna and the Apocalypse.
New morning feels different than before. It's dawning, this thing I've been waiting for, and I'm flying. My feet won't touch the ground. I'm ready for turning my life around. I'm waking, spent too long playing dead. I'm shaking these blues out of my head, not letting anybody bring me down. I'm ready for turning my life around. Hey, it's a brand new day, and I'm miles away. I am miles away. Hey, I am miles away. I am miles away, and it's a beautiful day.
Brilliant.
I mean, what I love about it is, well, you tell me, Jay, what do you think of that scene?
I think it is marvelous, and I applaud Stephen Sondheim for helping us create that. He studied under Oscar Hammerstein, who gave us The Sound of Music. That was musicals in the good old days. And Stephen Sondheim handed us Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Suddenly, the Broadway musical had cannibalism. So how long could it possibly be before someone said, "Oh, zombie musical"? And I thought it was great because it played it like a musical should. Totally serious. There she was, having a wonderful song for herself while everyone around her is being eaten alive. Absolutely hilarious.
Well, one of the things I noticed. Oh, Peter, you got something to say?
I just have to be a bit of a Scrooge here, I'm afraid. Oh my God. All right. Sorry, clearly a result of dental surgery, or God from on high trying to stop me from being a Scrooge. I just the clip, I think, left me feeling a bit cynical in the I think it's sort of standing on the shoulders of giants, including Sondheim, as Jay mentioned, in that it's it's quite derivative of Shaun of the Dead and of other things, and I guess I just there are a lot of sort of horror comedy takes on horror that I've seen, and I don't know, it just struck me a bit unimaginative, a bit of a mashup. But
actually, I don't find it so unimaginative. I mean, the idea. I mean, the backstory to that is that this is a young teenage girl who's just had an evening with a young teenage boy, and she is in her own thing, and the world around her is going completely crazy. And that's what teenagers are like. They're in their own little world, you know?
Right.
Absolutely. As a dad, I'm going to find that out in a year when my 12-year-old turns 13, probably. No, I suppose it's also just, growing up with like watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer and seeing the musical episode of Buffy and stuff like that. I guess
Right.
it's not so much, oh, this isn't good. It's that to me, this isn't new. So it's when people are sort of applauding it and saying, oh my God, this is such a fresh take. I'm thinking it's not that fresh.
It's
But that
the next.
I haven't seen it.
Is
I haven't
it,
seen
is it the take or is it the actors? Because I find the female lead to be very captivating.
Yeah, I mean, she looked like she had tons of charisma just in that one clip. So I'm
Yeah.
not knocking the talent. I suppose the idea for me is not that super fresh, but that doesn't mean And again, disclosure, I haven't seen the film, but so I'm just basing this opinion on that clip. But
You're sort of right, actually. I don't look at it as a fresh take, but it's the next take. You had your Rocky Horror Picture Show, you had your Zombie Prom, you had all of those, which are decades old. This is the next level of it. This is Shaun of the Dead plus a score. Talk to me in 10 more years. Talk to me in 10 more years from there. We're going to see a whole different genre, but we're seeing the evolution of this genre, and I think it's hilarious. I think it really is hilarious.
I look forward to watching it.
Yeah.
Well, let's now go to what is our honorable mentions segment, where we take all the films, excluding, unfortunately, we forgot about Gremlins, because as Peter said, that was a great one that we just missed. So, but here's our honorable mentions in a montage put together by our director, Mark Sherwood. I don't know if you noticed that there was the Three Godfathers in there, the anime version. Are you familiar with the film at all? I mean, because that is, I think, the third or fourth iteration of the story. It was originally a film done by John Ford, starring John Wayne and a couple of other characters in the 30s from westerns, and it was about three banditos or bad guys finding a baby in the desert, and they essentially become the three wise men, and the baby becomes Jesus, and they save him and do all that kind of stuff. And then anime took it over, did a thing. I mean, I just find that story to be not quite as edgy as the other ones, but a recurring theme in cinema. Have anyone ever either seen any of those versions of the Three Godfathers?
I'm going to. It sounds marvelous.
It is good. It is good. And while you're watching it, I mean, Peter, you were mentioning Gremlins, and you mentioned it earlier that Gremlins offered kind of a contrast between the two kinds of Gremlins, the ones that come out at midnight after water, and then the other one. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that? Because I think that was a good insight.
Well, I mean, there's that. There's also, the wonderful Phoebe Cates, big crush from the 80s, delivering a deliciously dark monologue about.
Yes,
about the that's how I found out there was no Santa Claus. And that's one of my favorite scenes. And there's
that's the one about the chimney, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
falls down the chimney, breaks his neck, and then the neighbors notice the smell. You know, this is like this is almost like, you know, the town, I think, is not dissimilar to sort of Bedford Falls. So the idea is that, you know, it's clearly like a Spielberg produced film, you know, Joe Dante directing, you know, and there's clearly an element there, I think, of you know, what would happen if a bunch of you know, creepy lizard creatures took over Bedford Falls. You can almost hear them, you know, maybe smoking a little something and musing about that. Oh, great! Well, I'll just go and write a screenplay about that then. So yeah, there's a definite sense of what happens if we take a lovely, nice setting and then throw this bizarre thing into it.
But don't forget about the merchandising rights.
Oh my God.
Well, yes.
Garen, you had said something, and I can't believe I never equated it this way. Absolutely brilliant. The notion that these little cute creatures, when they fall into water, become the other side of it. Water is considered creativity. When you talk about elements, water signifies creativity. So you're getting almost this parable that here is what Christmas was, these cute little fuzzy, joyous, happy endings. And then when it's immersed in creativity, what do we get? These ghoulish elements. So I don't know if the creators of that movie are geniuses by accident or on purpose, but that's the whole basis of what we're seeing now. Christmas, and even in this, the chimney scene, which I adore, the chimney monologue. Again, how many kids have said to their parents, "How does Santa fit down the chimney?" And so now, as they're older, they say, "We know how he doesn't fit down the chimney."
Well,
so we're seeing the creativity grow through the decades.
Let's also not forget feeding them after midnight. You know, that's almost like a kid's version of you know, don't have sex, you know, before marriage, you know, and then you get killed in the horror film.
Right.
You know, if you feed them after midnight, if you sneak off, if you get up out of bed and sneak those cookies, you know, monsters are going to get you. You know, but I can't speak to water and creativity. I think that's above my IQ level. But
Your pay grade.
yeah, but in terms of feeding after midnight, to me that strikes me as almost like one of those parental boogeyman tales. You know, you get up and sneak cookies, the gremlins are going to get you.
Yeah. Well, and
so
I mean, I think that was not too. When Gremlins was made, it was not too far from when Spielberg made 1941, and you know, Gremlins were the big things that screwed up all. You know, everyone kept talking about the Gremlins in aircraft and causing damage and stuff like that. So, but I wanted to go back to your Phoebe Cates because I think it was brilliant that they would take someone as wholesome and as beautiful as Phoebe Cates and telling a really dark story in the middle of a film. It's just like I could just see her looking at that when she was reading the script, going, "What a great monologue for me to play."
Yep.
Well, that's like the zombie musical, playing it fully. There's this brilliant actress giving this speech. So again, it's transcending one genre into another. I believed it. I remember when I saw the movie and I said, "Wow, what a great speech." I was so into that speech.
Well, anyways, our next two films we're putting together, okay, and it's Violent Night and Die Hard. And part of this is to talk about whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie. And if Mark wants to play his little bit of clip that he just discovered for us, I'd love to see it right now.
Die Hard is not a Christmas movie.
I think it is, but that's what we're going to talk about next, and we'll start off with a combo clip of Violent Night, which, as Mark has described it, as Die Hard, except John McCain is now Santa Claus. Here is a combo clip of Violent Night and Die Hard mixed together.
Well, I can't stand seeing another Santa in distress. Put his drinks on my tab, okay? Yeah.
Very merry of you. Okay. I better get going. Presents aren't going to deliver themselves. For your grandson, save me a trip. It's the new video games. Astro Blaster. Blaster, Astro. I don't know. Merry Christmas.
How do you know my grandson's name? How do you know I have a grandson? Aye! That door leads to the roof. Pisshead.
Go easy on him, it's Christmas.
Hey! You can't be up here. If you break your neck, I'm the one. My God.
What a good sight gag.
We can go anywhere you want us. You can walk out of here or be carried out. But have no illusions. We are in charge. So, decide now, each of you. And please remember, we have left nothing to chance.
Get them back. Knock them out.
Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho.
Alan Rickman.
He sounded like Betty Davis when it how.
Fasten your seatbelts. Let's just go back to Violent Night now first. That is literally the beginning of the movie. And what transpires in that movie is Santa Claus ends up going into this mansion, which is being taken over by a gang run by Scrooge. And it's a story of him, trying to do the same thing that John McCain did, which is where the similarities are.
You said John McCain twice, whereas I think you mean John McClane.
McClane, sorry.
Barack
Thank you for
Obama's
correcting me.
political adversary in 2008.
Yeah.
Well, he was a maverick also. So
Yeah. Self-proclaimed maverick. Yeah.
So Peter, you're doing this thing. Well, explain this thing you're doing with Hans Gruber.
Well, about a year ago now, I released a podcast called Old Habits, The Rise of Hans. And what I thought would be great to do is, because from Hans Gruber's point of view, Die Hard is Ocean's 11. And one thing within Ocean's 11 is that you get to find out like how he came up with the idea of the heist, how he got the team together. There are classic movies all about building teams. So Old Habits, The Rise of Hans is a mini-series audio drama. Very funny, like it's a comedic series. About how Hans left Berlin. There's loads about Hans and his backstory in Die Hard itself in the newscast. It talks about how he was a member of a radical group in Germany. And so, this is about how we start in Germany. We find out why he left Germany, and then how he ended up in LA, and how he came up with the idea to do the heist on Nakatomi Plaza. And in great Ocean's 11 or Magnificent 7 fashion, how he got the team together. But it's a very kind of comedic look at that, in terms of how from a prequel, it's not, very straight faced. There's a lot of comedy in Die Hard as it is, especially with the terrorists, like Uli, the Al Leon character eating the chocolate, and there's all sorts of laughs in Die Hard when it comes to the terrorists. So this podcast audio series takes it even further. And gives you...
Let me ask you the burning question of the night. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Well, this has been covered very well elsewhere. And the funny thing is that I think the debate only started because Bruce Willis said, Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie, it's a Bruce Willis movie. So, from his point of view, he was just defending it, in terms of, well, I want to make sure that my name's, above the title and I'm the brand for this movie.
Actually, I will take a little exception to that because I don't think that. I mean, I think when you strip away the gangsters and the terrorists and stuff like that, it's about a family getting back together for Christmas.
Yeah,
it's an American Christmas movie.
Yeah.
It's not a Christmas movie. Okay, we're all speaking British and there's Santa Claus. No, it's an American Christmas movie.
Absolutely. I mean, his wife's named Holly. There are 12 terrorists. There's 12 days of Christmas. The limo driver's called Argyle. But here's something that I was discussing on yet another podcast, plugging this podcast with my friend Anthony Arkin and his brother Matthew, which is, if you look at Lethal Weapon is an action movie that happens to be set at Christmas. There aren't really any Christmas themes. There's not really, I mean, maybe you've got Mel Gibson's character, is sort of finds redemption and a family and stuff, but it's a lot less to do with Christmas, I think, than Die Hard. Die Hard has this sort of slightly Capra element of one man redeeming himself.
It's embedded in the material itself, yes.
It really is. It really is embedded in the material.
And speaking of the material, actually, the book that it's based on is a sequel to the 1968 Frank Sinatra film, The Detective. So, so the filmmakers imbued the film with those Christmas themes in a much bigger way.
Mm-hmm. And one of Bruce Willis's first jobs as an was as an extra passing Frank Sinatra in a doorway.
That's a good piece of trivia.
Random piece of trivia, but yeah, so almost a handing off of the John McClane baton. Although I believe that the character in The Detective was called Joe Leland, so they sort of rewrote it.
And in the original script, it was called Joe Leland as well.
Joe Leland, yeah. And John McTiernan really has to be given credit for this because in the original draft, it was a bunch of politically minded terrorists.
Correct.
I think the villain's name was Little Tony the Red, was his sort of nickname. And, having read the novel as a big Die Hard fan, it really is a lot more distressing and humorless and depressing. But John McTiernan said terrorism is depressing. Why don't they pretend to be terrorists, but actually they're just out to steal a bunch of money? And the minute you do that, it becomes incredibly fun. And there wouldn't be any prequel comedy podcast from me if it wasn't for John McTiernan's idea of doing that.
And in keeping with that theory of McTiernan and what he did, the character Theo, which has become very much of a cult character, is a delightful take on somebody who is kind of sinister.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if you look at, it's kind of ahead of its time in terms of Hans has a pretty diverse workforce. Hans obviously has a bunch of German male models, but he's got a cool black nerd, computer hacker. He's got an Asian guy in there. Like he's got a real workforce, better than a lot of Hollywood casts.
Yeah,
that's what makes it so marketable. Also, it's by minimizing the terrorism, you don't worry about it being uncomfortable at certain times in history, and also to have a multi workforce like that. Of course, now it's marketable wherever you do it and however long you do it.
So I'm thinking that if I was ever to run a repertory movie theater house again, I would do a double feature: A Violent Night and Die Hard, and I would be considered brilliant for that.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen all of Violent Night, but I could see how
it's streaming now, so it's pretty easy to find.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's yeah. I think that could. I think I'd certainly go. But then I just went to see Die Hard on the big screen for the first time. I've seen it 5,000 times on widescreen TVs, but I've never seen it in the theater.
Yeah,
and I tell you what,
that's a good experience.
Two things really struck me. One was even more subtleties within Rickman's performance, because as a self-professed Rick maniac, I'm absolutely on board for that. But the other thing is that the effects still hold up so well.
Yes.
And also that to have it in Dolby 7.1 with those explosions and that helicopter exploding, it really was. I've seen this 5,000 times, but I've never seen it like that. And I thought, wow, this is, they had a a commercial. They had a campaign at the time saying it will blow you through the back of the movie theater. And I don't think they're wrong.
Yeah, and it made a lot of money, and it changed how the action film hero was described, because before that it was all Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger and stuff like that. But before we leave, so is Bad Santa and these dark films, do they deserve a present or a lump of coal?
I mean, I think horror movies are always giving you a lump of coal as a present.
Oh, good.
I think any horror movie is allowing you, taking you on that sort of haunted house, that ghost train ride, and giving you a scare, giving you that lump of coal, dangling the lump of coal in your face, sometimes in 3D, and then taking you out of the movie theater safely and saying, no, it was a present the whole time. You're welcome.
A good horror movie is always cathartic. If you walk out of the horror movie either waiting for the villain to come back in the next film or happy he's been killed, and I think this does that. It allows us, how many of us sit there and say, how did Santa climb down that thing? I don't believe this. I don't believe this. Movies like these allow us to sit there and go, I knew it all the time. And we walk out with a holiday smile, just a very different one than they did in 1940.
All right, so let me just have a follow-up question to all that, because you just sparked another question there, Jay, and I'll direct it right to you. Are these films that we're talking about today a subgenre or a genre of horror?
Right now, they're subgenre.
Okay.
Because we don't know exactly where to put it. As they grow, as they evolve, eventually they're going to become their own genre. There was a time that spaceman movies were relegated to just the movie serials and whatever, and now they're their own genre, and it's going to be the same thing here. Right now, it's like, let's go see that odd Christmas movie where Santa has an axe. Talk to me in 10 years when everyone is making one like that. Right now, it's a sub, and soon it's going to be its full genre.
What do you think, Peter?
I think Jay's right, but I think it's it's that blob in the middle of the Venn diagram where you've got action, horror, Christmas, and in the middle there is something where you can look at this festive season through a wonderfully dark, sinister lens, and I'm, as the kids say nowadays, I'm here for it.
Okay.
These movies are like when you get home from a Christmas party where everyone's wonderful and singing Christmas carols. You get home and you turn to your mate and you say, "Did you see what he was wearing? Did you see what she said?" These movies are that. God bless you, merry gentlemen, and then you come home and go, "Oh, come on." So
our time is running out, so I've got to kind of wrap this up. So, Peter, could you tell people where they can find out more about your Hans Gruber thing?
Yeah, it's well, you were kind enough to put a link. If you go to riseofhans.buzzsprout.com, that's where you can download, or you can go to Instagram at Rise of Hans Podcast. There's also a trailer for the podcast. I popped a YouTube link in the chat. And also, in addition to the audio drama series, there's also a companion discussion piece where myself and some of the cast talk about different memories of growing up in the 80s. I've got a great international cast. So I've got a Kiwi actor talking about what it was like to grow up in 80s New Zealand and experience Die Hard. I've got, someone who grew up in Miami. I've got my Welsh actor friends. And it's amazing how different these experiences were. We all saw Die Hard. We all had that. But the rest of the time, very different experiences in the 80s in different parts of the world, because this was pre-internet. So it was a lot more sort of sectioned off.
I've talked to some people in the past about how the 80s were special. They weren't all that special for me, but I know that there are people who thought about that. And Jay, where can people find out more about what's going on in your universe?
If you would like to, my work as a promoter and producer can be found at jaymichaelsarts, JAYMICHAELSARTS.com. There are lists and links to everything from several off and on Broadway productions I'm working on, all the way through to independent films. or you can go to Jaywatch, JAYWATCH.net, part of ACW TV, where I pick apart the great classic films, everything from 1931 all the way through to sometime in the 50s or 60s. But those are the two big ones. But you can just type my name in, and chances are you'll find me somewhere talking online somewhere.
I'm shocked to hear about that.
And I have one more thing, which does have a Boston Sci-Fi connection, but it's tenuous. I'm currently working as a writer-director on a comedy pilot called Friends Not Food, which you can find on Instagram at Friends Not Food. And the link is that I play a character in it, and I wrote the character of my father, who's like a fictional version of David Attenborough. And we just got Simon Jones, who was the original Arthur Dent in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for the BBC, to play my dad. So I just got to work with the original Arthur Dent.
Cool.
Which is a real kind of Boston sci-fi-tastic tidbit. Sadly, he didn't bring a dressing gown or slippers, but he was a delightful man and is very, very talented and nice.
Actually, speaking of Boston Sci-Fi, the first episodes of Jaywatch next season in February will be saluting Boston Sci-Fi with a movie marathon of Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe.
Well, now that both of these guys have done a good job of plugging Boston Sci-Fi and what we do here, I now have to officially do the plug for us, which is to say, tickets are on sale. We've got a great lineup of stuff going on. Go to bostonscifi.com. We have a Cyber Sweethearts Ball that's going to be happening on opening day. We have Lisa Downs coming from the UK to talk about her films, Life After Navigator, Life After Neverending Story. Tickets are now on sale. Tickets are on sale for the marathon, and you can find out more, like I said, at bostonscifi.com. You can also find more about our podcast on YouTube and every place else that you get your podcast from. And before we leave, I want to thank Mark Sherwood, our director, and Irene Leite, our producer, for putting us all together. When we come back right after Christmas, we will be doing a whole thing on the marathon, which is a 24-hour binge view. Thanks for everyone else for helping. Thanks for joining us. And here's a little bit of a twist for our outgoing banner. This is a reprise of our trailer from SF39, because this year it's SF49. So here's a trailer we made back 10 years ago. And thank you all for joining us. And thank you guys for giving us a great conversation.
Thank you, Karen. Always a pleasure.
The 39th annual Boston Sci-Fi Film Festival is coming. So shut off the Xbox, pinch some cash from mommy's purse. Grab a friend and head to the Somerville Theater for 9 days of science fiction cinematic wizardry. Meet other life forms.
Well, hello.
Make friends. Make enemies. Welcome to Earth. Then cap it off with a 24-hour movie marathon.
24 hours from now, some of us could survive.
You want tickets? BostonSciFi.com.